for a long time, and it is official. Our Adrian Wojnarowski, the first to report that Kawhi Leonard no longer a member of the San Antonio Spurs. He has been traded north of the border to the Toronto Raptors. DeMar DeRozan goes to San Antonio in exchange with some other details that we will explain in just a couple of minutes. But first, reaction from Spurs head coach Greg Popovich, who's no longer with Kawhi.
Trades are tough. You know, I talked to Kawhi on the phone. I talked to Danny on the phone. Those are personal relationships that you have with people, and that's always difficult. It's probably the toughest part of our profession. We talked often over the summer about a lot of different things. Attempts were made, you know, to see what would be best, and in the end, this trade appeared, and we felt that this was the way to go. Kawhi was a great teammate all the way through. He did his work. He was no problem for anybody. You know, all those stories that denigrated him in that regard. That was unfortunate and inaccurate.
Boy, it's been a long road to get to that point for Pop and the entire Spurs organization, but here's details of the trade as we're along the red carpet here at the ESPYs. Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green, who's been such a good player in San Antonio, going to Toronto in exchange for DeMar DeRozan, Jacob Portal, and a 2019 first-round pick. Again, we've been waiting for it, and it is official. Kawhi Leonard gets his wish, although not to the city that he had originally requested. For more on that, we bring in our NBA insider, Adrian Wojnarowski. Adrian, have you slept at all? Again, this has been 6 months in the making. Thank you for being here. Have you slept? Answer that question first.
I've slept, yeah.
20 minutes.
Last night.
Yeah, about 20 minutes. First things first, because the Raptors are taking a risk, definitely a risk, because Kawhi Leonard, 1 year left on his deal, and he has made it very clear he wants to be right here playing at Staples Center right there for the Los Angeles Lakers. So why does Masai Ujiri take this risk with Kawhi for a year, potentially?
Because he didn't think Toronto was good enough to beat Boston and probably even Philadelphia. And this was his chance to get a top 3 or 4 player in the NBA. They're not getting that player in free agency in Toronto. DeMar DeRozan has really been the most accomplished player in franchise history, and it took the kind of talent Leonard has. And now he's got a year, the way Sam Presti did in Oklahoma City, and recruited Paul George to stay with the Thunder and kept him away from the Lakers. Now this is his chance to do that with Leonard. And if they don't keep him and he leaves and he comes to L.A., well, they'll start a rebuild in Toronto. But he felt like this was a chance to chase greatness, and that's what they've done with this trade.
Is there a belief from Kawhi's side that we've heard rumblings he does not want to go to Toronto? Would he sit out this season, or will he report? What are you hearing right now about the destination for him?
No, they've been in communication with Kawhi Leonard's camp. He's going to play. He'll be at training camp. He's healthy. He may be at USA Basketball's mini camp next week with Greg Popovich's coaching. That's possible. But the one thing I was told today, he started to warm to the idea that he's going to a contender. He's got a team that could be as good as anybody in the Eastern Conference. And now it's on Toronto to try to recruit him, keep him. But in his mind right now, he's headed to L.A. next year.
And quickly, Woj, the Spurs, they had heard from a number of teams and said no thank you. Why was this the right deal for San Antonio?
The chance to get DeRozan, a second-team All-NBA player in his prime. They did not want a package from Boston, Philadelphia, that was really built around draft picks. That, you know, Greg Popovich is 70 years old. They want to stay relevant. They've got LaMarcus Aldridge. You know, they've got other pieces there that will keep them in the playoffs. They didn't want to go into a rebuild in San Antonio. DeRozan was the best available player and a young player in total that they really liked.
So DeRozan now goes to the West, and we're talking about a guy that loves the North. He was embraced by Toronto fans. He said, be told one thing and the outcome another. Can't trust them. Ain't no loyalty in this game. Sell you out quick for a little bit of nothing. This was, of course, on social media. What's the DeMar DeRozan reaction as we see this personally on social media? Why is he so upset about this trade?
Because he did love Toronto, and he was, you know, their most accomplished player in history. He's an LA kid. He could have come to the Lakers in free agency. That became home for him, and it was emotional for him. And he loved being the face of that franchise. But he's a professional. I think he'll love playing for Greg Popovich, and I think that relationship will bud quickly. But you know, he talked to Masai Ujiri at Summer League, and Masai told him at that point, I was told, we don't have anything for you right now. But Masai has always been very clear with him, Kyle Lowry, that everything's on the table with us. We haven't been good enough. And if I see a deal that makes us better, we're going to do it. It happened to be DeRozan this time.
It has been a difficult run for the Toronto Raptors over the past several years, getting right there, not being able to jump over that hurdle. Let's see how different it is for DeMar in San Antonio.
And the lasting image, unfortunately, because he was such an icon with Toronto, was what he was sitting on the bench in Game 3 at the end, right, wondering what happened after losing Games 1 and 2. Woj, excellent work.
Thank you. Let's get some sleep.
Have fun tonight.
Hey, time for the Cadillac Red Carpet Report. Here's
the day after baseball's All-Star game, traditionally, one of the quietest on the sports calendar. Today, not so much.
Not so much. A 4 a.m. flurry of activity in the newsroom. That's what we had. Let's get right to the breaking news. And for that, we bring in our NBA insider, Adrian Wojnarowski. Woj, tell us what you know about Kawhi Leonard at this hour.
David, Toronto is finalizing a deal with San Antonio to acquire Kawhi Leonard, DeMar DeRozan, and more would go from Toronto to the Spurs, but both Leonard and DeRozan have been made aware that a deal is likely imminent, and the sides will try to finalize an agreement here later this morning.
Yeah, Woj, that's what I was going to go to. How close are there any hurdles in the way to getting this done?
DeRozan is the key element going back from Toronto to the Spurs. Both Chris Haynes and I, in reporting the story, were told that the deal is close and that there's an expectation that they'll get done later today. DeRozan, late last night, was made aware of the deal, and he has started to tell teammates and those close to him that he expects he's on his way to San Antonio.
Woj, Kawhi has let it be known he's not welcoming the deal. He wants to play for the Lakers. We know that. He's got a year left on his contract. What's the rationale for the Raptors making this deal?
Masai Ujiri, their president of basketball operations, this is a move that takes some courage because he has no expectation that he can re-sign Leonard. He will have a season to try and sell him on Toronto. He is trading away potentially, a second-team All-NBA player in DeMar DeRozan, who had his best year in the NBA, for, really one of the preeminent talents in all the league, who played only 9 games last season with a quad injury, and who has made it clear that he wants to be in Los Angeles, that he will sign there in free agency next summer. It's a somewhat similar situation to what Oklahoma City did with Paul George last year. They were able to sell George on Oklahoma City, never let him even get a meeting with the Lakers in free agency. But this is a sizable gamble, and what it would do if they lose him in free agency, if the deal goes through and they lose Kawhi Leonard to L.A. or somewhere else in free agency next summer, it would expedite a rebuild in Toronto. But this is the conversation that's gone on for like 10 days to 2 weeks pretty seriously between the Raptors and Spurs, and they're going to try to culminate that later this morning with an agreement in principle.
All right, later this morning, we'll continue to monitor it all day here on SportsCenter. Woj giving us the very latest as we close in on a Kawhi Leonard deal to the Raptors. Rachel Nichols provided us with the screenshots of DeRozan's Instagram story. He starts with, "Be told one thing and the outcome another. Can't trust him. Ain't no loyalty in this game. Sell you out quick for a little bit of nothing." He continues with, "Soon you'll understand." And then finally, "Don't disturb." So DeMar DeRozan making his feelings known very clearly there in that Instagram post.
Breaking news on SportsCenter this morning. The Spurs and Raptors made it a blockbuster night, finalizing a deal that would send Kawhi Leonard to Toronto for a package including DeMar DeRozan. That, according to ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski and Chris Haynes, who also report neither player is expressing enthusiasm for this trade. Both teams excited about what each player could bring to their franchise. It was a lost season for Leonard due to health issues, but over the last 3 seasons, Leonard ranks 15th in offensive efficiency among players with at least 100 starts. He's even better on the defensive end. He's 4th in defensive efficiency. And while DeRozan has been a good offensive player for the Raptors, he's barely inside the top 100 in defensive efficiency in that span. Our NBA front office insider Bobby Marks joins us now on SportsCenter AM. And Bobby, you tweeted earlier this morning, like early, that this deal is like high-risk poker, but you like it for Toronto anyway. Why is that?
Well, I think from the risk side, Randy, is that you are getting a Kawhi Leonard who is on a one-year contract, is on an expiring contract. He will not sign an extension in Toronto. So you are dealing him almost like a one-year rental where you are going to have to in-house recruit him for the year, similar to Oklahoma City and Paul George. But when I look at it for Toronto, a team that's been to the playoffs 5 years in a row, has not gotten past the Eastern Conference Finals, your window to win is right now with this group. And if you can get a top 4 player and Leonard, you go out and do it, even with the risk of him not being there in 2019.
Okay, but let's talk about the financial impact for 2019. How could this help or hurt Toronto money-wise in the long run?
Well, when they signed Kyle Lowry and Serge Ibaka last summer, they did it to short-term contracts. Basically, they aligned themselves with DeRozan. They will still be over the cap next year in 2019 if Leonard does leave to a team like possibly the Lakers. Where it does get interesting is in 2020, and I think Masai Ujiri has embraced a rebuild if Leonard does walk. The only player on the books that year will be Norman Powell. So without Leonard, we will be looking at a full rebuild in Toronto in 2020.
You mentioned Raptors president Masai Ujiri. If you're dealing with a guy in Kawhi Leonard who missed so much of last season with a team with which he has won an NBA Finals, how do you still go along with this deal considering his lack of enthusiasm to come play in Toronto?
You make the trade, and now you recruit him for the whole year like Sam Presti did with Paul George. I know there is the concern with the injury. He only played 9 games last year, but it is rare when an all-NBA player like a Kawhi Leonard becomes available on the trade market here. Here is a man in Masai Ujiri has full confidence in himself to go out and make a deal that many general managers really would not do right now.
All right, ESPN NBA front office insider Bobby Marks with the Inside Force. Bobby, we appreciate it.